Hello everyone, welcome back to Gelvin Valley, a map by Wild Wild Wes, and it's on Farming Simulator 15. We're out here rolling rocks into the ground, at least the smaller rocks. Some of the bigger ones we're going to have to come through and pick up at some point. But at the moment we are trying our best to eliminate most of the rocks. I see a larger one there, and looking at the PDA map kind of in the lower left-hand corner, I think we're eliminating most of them. But we're going to have a little bit of work to do picking up those that remain. I've been kind of sharing some stories in these past few episodes, and actually the past two I've been talking about family pets. Can't believe it's taken 2 episodes, and I'm probably gonna waste your time here with a third episode talking about pets. So I sure hope there'll be some comments left about where people will share about their own family pets. I know pets are pretty special to have, in a family setting. They really become almost kind of part of your family. That's how attached you can get to them. I know they're just animals, but boy, they can really be helpful in brightening one's day, brightening the mood, and in just being kind of who they are. And so it's pretty easy to get attached to them, and we got attached to our animals too. I think the last episode we had, it wasn't that interesting. How all those, I wish I knew how that worked. All those tire tracks just disappeared. Anyway, that rock is too big. We'll come back later and pick it up. Got just a little bit more to do in this field, and we'll be moving on to the next. I'm down to 30 minutes or whatever it is on my lease. Oop, I don't think I want to do that. I think I got a little bit out front here. Yeah. And I can't get these, I would have to take it out in the editor. All these plants that are here, I think the map author intended that this would always be a grass field kind of in this area, not that it would turn into arable. I obviously came in and upset that, but that is what it is. We'll just head off to the next field here. That looked small enough it should have smashed that rock, but it didn't. But yeah, I'm unable to, obviously with a chisel plow, with this roller, it should have smashed all those weeds, but of course it doesn't. I know there's weeds and what have you associated with the soil mod, which I still don't have, installed in the map here, or it is installed in the map. I'm just not using the mod. I've kind of deactivated it for a while. Well, I get my feet under me here. Um, but these other weeds, they're a different type of foliage, and there's no way in game to get rid of the foliage or spray it out, chisel it out. So and I think it's because it's a decorative foliage versus a type of crop, which the weeds are that the soil mod uses. So therefore, the chisel plow is able to affect them. But that's all right. I don't mind seeing those weeds there. I mean, in real life, even in a dirt field, you'll see weeds growing up periodically, and just one of those things the farmer has to deal with. So we'll swoop into this field here. Oh! Ah, stop! Oh! Oh dear. There. Phew! I've done that before, where I assume the entrance to the field is much further down than what I think it is, and I forget it's directly across from this entrance. It kind of hides behind that tree. Anyway, almost ended up in the ditch. Good thing I didn't. Alright, here we go on this field. Oh goodness. Come on, pull the roller. You can do it. Man alive, I don't know why I pull so hard. I definitely need to mod it so maybe it isn't quite so heavy. But maybe if someone will comment on that too, that I shouldn't mod it, maybe it would be this heavy to pull in real life. So far, it's been able to barely pull it up some of these hills, but we'll see how it does on this one here. But pets, I mean, we've been talking about pets and animals at home, and I still haven't gotten to the bottom of my list of animals that we've had here, and I'll maybe switch to cattle. Um, I live right next door to my folks. Uh, really, right next door to the place where I grew up. There was a home that came up for sale, so we kind of in the neighborhood here, and we moved in next to mom and dad. My wife's been a good sport about it. I don't know if there's any ladies listening to this, but I think sometimes the idea of it living next door to your mother-in-law isn't exactly your idea of a good home setting. But we've made it work. We've been here over 20 years, so it's worked out all right. So anyway, next door with my dad, he had about, up until recently, he had about 50 acres. A lot of it was pasture. He sold about 5 of it when he moved homes from one end of the property kind of to another part of the property, if you will. But he still has a pasture. He still has a fair herd of cattle. Nothing big. I mean, you can't run that many head of cattle on that kind of acreage. But he's always had a heart for his grandchildren. You know, now as they're growing, which includes my kids, and so a couple of the boys have taken on calves as projects over the years. In the last video, I was talking about the concept of bummer lambs. Where a little lamb will be born, and I don't know, maybe the mother sheep has triplets or something, and if one of them isn't doing well, I mean, somehow the animals can sense that, or maybe she only wants to. They'll sometimes knock, for whatever reason, they don't accept one, they'll knock it to the side and not allow it to feed, with the others or what have you. Yeah, I don't know how all that happens, but so if they don't do that, the farmer then has a bummer lamb, or that's kind of what we call them here, to where they either need to try to find another ewe, if you can trick her into accepting him or her, the little lamb, or failing that, you basically, the last choice you have is to bottle feed the lamb, and that can tend to take a lot of time. Well, sometimes the same thing can happen with cattle, and sometimes for whatever reason the cow will reject the calf. Cattle don't tend to have more than one at a time. I think we've had one time when one of them had twins, maybe. I think this happened. It either happened here or it happened on Lone Oak, where my uncle's farm. Um, so, I mean, maybe in the case of twins, there could be a rejection, but sometimes, for reasons I'll never know, the cow will simply reject a calf. And it's uncanny sometimes, it's like the animals will sense that there's something wrong with the calf. Like it's sick, it's got some disease, something just isn't quite right, and the mama cow sadly will reject it and not have anything to do with it. Well, so one of these calves, I'll never forget this one. I think I was called at work, and my son, it's kind of fun in the spring, living next door to my dad. The grass is brilliant green, and the cows are fat, they're bred, and they start cranking out their little calves, and it's just fun to watch, each new little one that arrives. And but I think there was one time my son called me at work, and I had to come home early, and he was just concerned. He for whatever reason, we couldn't get a hold of my dad. I mean, the calf belonged to my dad, but a cow had a new baby, and the little tyke was out, I think, in the pouring down rain, lying close to the woven wire fence, just laying there in the mud, and with the rain beating down, the mother was nowhere to be seen, and he's like, Dad, what do I do? So I don't remember what all we did. I think we hauled it somewhere, carried it somewhere to shelter, and I think the mother continued to reject it. We never could get, and I don't think there was another cow to take him. So we had to bottle feed him, and I think my dad at that point just gave the calf to my son, this would be my oldest son. And so he named him Sirloin. Kind of a play on words, sirloin steak or whatever. Um, I gotta say, I mean, these were pets we would eventually eat. And maybe some people would say, well, that's not a pet. Well, I don't know what term you put to it. For a while, he was a pet. So my son, did all the work of feeding him and helping him in the pasture and really tamed Sirloin down. I think up until the day Sirloin died, well, I say when he was killed for hamburger, he was just so tame. My son could walk up to him, pet him, and I guess the relationship developed. From feeding him from a calf. Sirloin probably saw my son as his mother, and so whenever mother came around, he just yeah, he was just good that way. He was really tame. A lot of these calves, when they don't have that, they can be pretty skittish. They're very hard to catch. They're faster than all get out, in the fields. And there's things, we got to do with them when you raise them. Whether there's dewormer, there's certain medications they get to help them grow. We never put any growth hormones or anything like that in them. The young bulls that were born, they were castrated. So that kind of thing. So every now and again, you gotta have a roundup, and it's like they could sense that whatever was going to happen with the humans, whatever interaction they were going to have, was going to be unpleasant. So therefore, they didn't want to participate. And Sirloin would have had to go through that. I think he was a male calf, but for whatever reason, he didn't take that out on my son or whatever. He always would come up to him and was just really tame, which was kind of cool. But like I say, eventually he got to the proper age, and we turned him into, well, hamburger, turned him into sirloin, whatever. And he wasn't the only one. There was another one, and this I think he had jointly with one of his cousins. Another one I think called Chuck. Um, Chuck's egg, if you will. So kind of the same thing. We didn't keep that one at our house. This was kept at the cousin's house, but I think my son would periodically go over and try to help with him. And same sort of deal, bottle fed. I think he also was fairly tame, clear until the end. So, but he ultimately was put to very practical use, feeding a family. Um, so it's in, and there's lots of sources of meat out there. The farmers do a pretty good job, but you never know unless you have the meat on your own place. You never know what's going to be in it, what kind of hormones they're feeding it, what kind of feed they're putting it in, what they get injected with, and when you raise your own animal, you can control those factors. And so I know that's why my dad, year after year, we always had a few cattle around the place, so we could butcher them and feed the family, have a little bit of meat, and didn't have to rely just on what you got at the store, because you may not necessarily know where all that meat came from, what was done to it, and so forth. Not saying it's unsafe. I'm just saying if you have the option to have some of your own, why not? Um, so my dad didn't corn feed them. Most of them were just simple grass fed. The bull typically got a little bit of grain. I mean, give them some grain over time, but most of it was just simple grass fed beef, free range, if you will, in the pasture. So as a kid, I know I did a lot of fencing. Um, and I think I've mentioned we lived on a rock pile, so you can imagine how much fun it was to dig post holes for fences and corrals and all that stuff. Didn't have a huge number of animals, but enough to get a flavor of what it's like to be a rancher. So there was sirloin, there was chuck, and more recently, this time my youngest son, um, I think he had done some work for my dad, so kind of in payment to that, in lieu of wages, cash wages, my father gave him a calf, his own calf, and This one here, he nicknamed Babe. All the animals have names typically, and I think Babe was for the tall tail, Paul Bunyan, who had the big blue ox, Babe. So that's how my son got the name for his calf. And same deal, fed him milk supplement, bottle fed him as a calf, then fed him hay and grain and whatnot to get him fattened up. And eventually, actually, I think that was this year, uh, took him to the slaughterhouse, and my son got a nice check for for the meat value of it. So this one here we didn't happen to eat. He kind of had it as an investment. Um, $1,200, not bad for a young kid that's just past the eighth grade. For not much he had to do with the animals. So, and I attribute that to my dad. I mean, shoot, I mean, Babe is for the most part on my dad's pasture, eating my dad's hay. Um, so it wasn't really our animal, or rather my son's animal. Hard to say, but he did take care of him, especially when he was just a young calf. So yeah, it'll be some money you can save for school or whatever. And on the names, growing up, I think we did the same thing. My mom and dad never liked it when we would name animals that we had, especially the cattle. If we named them after people that we knew, I think it was just kind of the thing of, hey, we're going to take these animals, we have them here for food. We're eventually going to slaughter them. So if you name them after someone we know, and then we got to say, well, today we slaughtered so and so. That didn't really sit very well with them. So we had to come up with fake names, and my kids have done that for the most part. But all my dad's grandchildren, they usually come out when he has a cattle roundup or whatever. Most of the ranchers, I think, when they put a tag in the ear of a calf or cow or whatever, it's like a number, or maybe there's a letter with a number, cow number 54 or whatever. Well, my dad used to do that, but now the grandchildren, they're naming every single one of these. So he's played along, and I've noticed on the tags in the ears of these animals to identify them, he has written the name, and it's kind of hard to see sometimes. It's much easier to see a number. I mean, there's a reason why they do that. But as all of these are named, you'll you'll see the name on the tag when you wander out into the pasture and kind of move around with the cows. My goodness, I'm down to 14 minutes, and I'm still not done with all this. This is horrendously slow, crawling up the hill. So, yeah, this is going to start costing me some money to finish all this up. Oh, and back to my daughter. I mean, some other animals she had at the place a time or two. There was once she worked for a while for my brother-in-law in his vet clinic, and every now and again there'd be some animals that would come home with her. And to this day, I think she does that. She works at a vet clinic in another state, and her husband's a very tolerant man, I guess, and every now and again there's animals that come home with her. She showed a picture of 3 goats or something she had for a while that came to her house, and anyway, that's just kind of part of who she is. So for a while we had a batch of little piglets out in the barn. So it was so funny watching them things. I've spent a fair amount of time around pigs working for an uncle that raised them for a while. And they're some of the funniest animals to watch. And it was just kind of cute to see all these little pigs and the mess they made. My goodness, when it was feeding time and seeing them, I mean, they didn't just politely sit outside the pan where the milk was poured. Oh no, both front feet were in the pan, all 4 feet if they could fit them, and the whole passel of them, would try to, basically up it in the pan to get their fair share of the milk, and it was just kind of a hoot watching them do all that. But I'll tell you what, it sure doesn't take them long to start smelling like pigs too. They're cute little babies, but there's something distinctive about the smell of a hog. You get that on your hands, and it's in your skin, and it's hard to get out. I mean, I've known people that have raised them for a living. It gets in their clothes, and you just kind of smell them. smell it when they come, no matter how hard they try to get it just a clean of that. We didn't have those piglets for very long. At some point, she took them back, I think, to the clinic. I don't know if they just had them for a little while. I'd have to ask her about that again. I don't know why we had them in the first place. Could be she just asked if she could have some pigs for a while just for kicks and brought them home. That wouldn't be the first time. And then there was a time I think we had some ducks in there. Yeah, in the barn over there, we set up a little pond. We put water in there for them, kind of a little thing. And I don't know what it is about ducks and water. You know, just a bird, and you'd think would be similar to chickens, but nope, totally different. So we had a batch of them in there, and eventually I think introduced them to the pond. Um, I think we did, and I'm not really sure where all those birds ended up. All I know is we had ducks um, in the barn for a while that she was raising. I know years ago, my grandfather would periodically raise wildlife birds, if you will. He was really fond of quail, and I think the bob white, uh, two common birds in the area. And I really like the quail too. It's really cool to see them run along the ground, kind of all of them in a line, their little family. And I don't know, what is it that causes one animal to be prized and another one despised? You go figure. I mean, there's another bird that we have in the area, the starling. They breed like rats. There's billions of them, it seems, and nobody likes them. They poop all over everything. But yet, you talk to most people, and they probably would agree that the quail is a pretty cool bird and worthy of preservation, um, worthy of even trying to have more of them around. So I know my grandfather would periodically, have an incubator or whatever and raise a few. Um, so I know he liked them. I don't know that he. Some people I think will hunt and eat quail. I don't think he ever did. He just liked seeing them around. So maybe one of these years we'll have to do something like that. We used to have a covey of quail, in a briar patch close by our house. It's been a while since I've seen them, so maybe they've moved on. We also have a lot of coyotes in the area, so maybe a coyote got them too. I really don't know. One more pass. We are done with this field. On to the next. I think I've taken care of everything downhill, right? I'm trying to remember when I started this a couple of episodes ago. So I think, watch it out. I think I gotta head to my next fields. I think I have 1, 2, 8, 37, and 38 still open. So maybe I'll go to 38. That might be the next one in line. I'm gonna cut across this property here. Not my land, but what can I say? I got a good working relationship with the neighbor who owns this field, and he said I can cross it anytime I wish. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm gonna cut these off. At least I won't encounter a car in the middle of the field. These are ways I'm hoping on. So we'll head up to field 38 and start rolling it. There it is, right over the little dry gulch. Here we go, back to the field. Right down here in this corner. Be able to start. I think these are 2 rocks we should be able to smash. Pound into the soil. Here we go uphill. So we're gonna have the same uphill battle that we had. It's a little bit slow, and I'm running out of time on my lease. But I think, like I say, I think it'll extend it. It's just going to force me to pay the hourly rate versus a group rate. I can get a discount, I think, if I do multiple hours. So what I'm learning is I need more than 4 hours to do it. Maybe next time, if I do a lot of rolling, I'll call for 5 or 6 hours. We'll just We'll see how long this takes. Maybe one other bit of pets, if you will, that we had as a family. Um, can't leave off the chickens. We always had a few chickens around growing up at home. Um, had mixed luck with them over the time. Like I say, there's coyotes in the area. There's possums. There's skunk. So I think a lot of initially we had trouble keeping chickens, and some of them would just fly out of the pen or whatever and wander off, and so we lose some that way too, and probably a wild animal got them. But eventually at home, my dad and my brothers and I, we constructed what I've always referred to as a Cadillac chicken house. Um, Dad got tired of fence getting beat up and chickens getting out underneath the fence or critters getting in, so we literally went out with concrete and we used chain link and we set it in concrete in the soil with a footing, poured around the pen, and then we took more netting and we put it over the top of the pen so they couldn't fly out. That was always a terminal issue too. And the way my dad would deal with it is he would clip the wings of the chickens, of the hens, and he only would clip one of the wings. I think he did it so that if they tried to fly, they would fly crooked and couldn't get out. Um, and maybe he didn't take the second wing because they were beating the daylights out of him while he was trying to clip the first wing. So maybe he figured one wing was good enough. So we always had some chickens around, and for a number of years, my folks were living in that house up there. They don't live there anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, they moved to a different section of their property. But while they were up there, when the kids left the house, they didn't really have their own chickens anymore. So they said we could borrow the hen house if we wanted to raise a few, and so we did. So we got a batch of hens up there, laid eggs. My son kind of took charge of that. He'd be the one that would feed them, and he kind of went around the neighborhood. We had more eggs than we knew what to deal with, and so he would sell them to some of the neighbors. It kind of helped cover some of the cost, but not really. It's anytime you do that on your own, it's never going to be as cheap as you can get them in the store. But kind of like I mentioned on the beef, at least doing it this way on your own, you would know, this doesn't like that hell, does it? You would know kind of what was going into it. We fed them pretty tame stuff. We didn't have them pumped full of hormones. Well, we didn't eat them either. These were just laying hens. I don't think we ever ate any of them. There, I think it's really steep with a little bottom there, so yeah, I probably should have tilled around it. But I didn't. What can I say? We didn't name the chickens. Um, they were just the chickens. We could basically tell them apart. The rooster was always easy to identify. Somehow, you buy what you think are going to be hens, but they threw in a chucklehead rooster. And I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but my boys still laugh at it, at me. In this Cadillac hen house, I mean, there was the pen, which I just described, but I forgot to describe there was also a red shed. It had tin on the sides. It had a nice roof over it, completely waterproof in there. And we had an automatic watering unit in there that my dad had set up years ago. There was a pipe coming in from the well and the pump house and everything. There was um, might have even been electricity in there. I don't remember that. Yeah, there was a light in there so we could see. There was a bunch of tiers of boxes with straw so the chickens could lay their eggs and do whatever chickens do in there. I had built into the side of the chicken house back in the day a feeder, kind of built it into the studs, and so we could just pour it in there and kind of leave it, and the chickens could eat, whenever and whatever they wanted. So, I call it a Cadillac. I'm sure it isn't as good as other commercial chicken houses out there or whatever, but that way the chickens could basically be free range, and then they could go in and lay their eggs and cackle and do whatever chickens do whenever they wanted. Boy, this Lord doesn't like the hill. But one time I was in there doing some repairs on the water, and anybody that's ever worked with chickens before, I think you probably know how aggressive a rooster can be. You know, it's probably a protective instinct. It's their job to protect the hens or their harem, if you will. And they're pretty sneaky. I mean, I remember as a kid, I'd be terrified to go into the hen house if the rooster was in there. And there was a number of times, this is something I didn't understand as a kid, you know, you still need to feed the animals, you need to get help. It was something I had to learn. If I saw the rooster in there, well, I just didn't go in there. And which meant that the water might have been empty, the feeder might have been empty, they wouldn't get fed, and I didn't tell my folks about it. They eventually found out about it, and you know, they'd be pretty upset with me, you know, for not feeding the animals or what have you. So, um, I was terrified of the rooster. And the one we had growing up at home, he was just vicious, or could be vicious at times, and he would attack you. And literally, it would draw blood. He would come flying at you with those thorns on his feet and claws, and he would literally draw blood. And kind of had to go running out of there crying. And so when we had chickens, now I'm a man and you know got my own kids, and I'm in there bent over, kind of in a tight spot, trying to fix the water. And that silly rooster would sneak up behind me and try to attack me. He did it a number of times, and finally, I mean, one time he was so close, I got up, and this is what my boys laugh at me at. I kicked him hard, and he literally bounced off the wall. Like I say, please don't take that the wrong way. I was just trying to protect my own self at that point, and I finally told my boys, get him out of here, you know, get him outside, out with his hens. And it was just kind of funny listening to him. It was a while before he attempted to crow, and when he did, he sounded kind of like he was half sick. He couldn't hardly get it out. But yeah, that was the chickens. We don't have them anymore. My parents eventually sold at home, and they moved to a different spot, so we no longer have access to the chicken house. And we've talked periodically with the kids about setting up another hen house and whatnot, but just haven't done it. Oh, look at that. I have another rental contract. Or two of them? Huh. Anywho, I think that finally covers all the pets we ever had at home, be they chickens or cattle or horse or pigs or ducks or cats, whatever. There's always something. And I think I'm at the end of a half hour once again, so I think I'll just terminate the episode here. So thank you for joining me and coming here to see a little bit of farming on Gelvin Valley while listening to an old man reminisce and talk to drivel and whatnot. So thanks for coming by. We'll talk to you again soon the next time. Bye bye for now.